Are you an accounting or tax professional who wants to stay ahead without spending a dime? Join thousands who trust insightful accountant and tax practice news to keep them informed and empowered. Get expert updates on QuickBooks, Xero, tax planning strategies, and workflow tips delivered straight to your inbox. Whether you're a solo bookkeeper, firm leader, or tax advisor, these newsletters are your shortcut to what's next in the profession. They're free, practical, and built for people like you. Visit insightfulaccountant.com and hit subscribe to start your smarter workflow today for free.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Accounting Insiders Podcast. My name is Gary DeHart. I am the host of the Accounting Insiders Podcast, publisher of Insightful Accountant, and my guest today is Rob Hamilton, who is the head of go-to-market at Digits. Rob, welcome. Thanks for carving out some time here to just talk about Digits, talk about the space, talk about AI.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so
excited to be here, Gary. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here. And we did a little a pre-call prior to this, and found out that our worlds kind of cross in multiple paths. And your map in the background, I told my son about that, and he's like, "Oh, I think we had he had like a couple of his fraternity brothers that participated in that at some level last year." So
incredible.
Yeah, that's great.
It's a small world, so lots
Absolutely.
of fun.
I guess we should say what that is. So the map in the background, back behind him, is a map. What do you tell it? Why don't know what it is. You tell it.
Yeah. It's funny. I in college I was in a fraternity. It's called Pi Kappa Phi, and it's the only fraternity that has a national philanthropy associated with it. And that philanthropy raises money and awareness for people with disabilities. And so in college, I did a cross-country cycling, like bike cycling route across the country from Seattle to DC to raise money and awareness for people with disabilities. So in every city and town we stopped in, it was roughly 80 to 120 miles of cycling a day. And then in every city and town we stopped in, we did service projects and events and things like that with organizations that work with people with disabilities. So it's called the Journey of Hope. I think some names of what it's called and things like that have changed I did this entirely too long ago. Like, it makes me sad to think about how long ago that was almost. But it was an incredible way to see the country and to make an impact as well. So
That's awesome. Well, it's funny. My son, who is at PICAP, he sent us a note the other day just saying, "Hey, we're doing a fundraiser. Can I send you the link to donate?" And they have Parents Weekend on campus this coming weekend.
Oh, incredible. Yeah.
And like, this was 2 weeks ago. And I said, "Sure, as long as you can tell us what's going on Parents Weekend."
Yeah.
And he's like,
hold that over his head a little bit.
Yeah. I'll have to get back to you. And he's not gotten back to us, and that's in tomorrow. So
oh boy.
It's like he's a college student or something.
Yeah, you got to,
right?
Find leverage where you can, for sure.
100%. So, all right. So we're talking about, we're going to carving out this time, really to talk about Digits. And I want to set the stage with a couple of things. One, if you have not read this article that Murph did on Digits in Insightful Accountant, I highly encourage you to visit blog.insightfulaccountant.com. And it's a two-part series. He took a really deep dive into the product. I'm not sure who he spent time with on your side, but he spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, and really, I think, gave a great overview of the product. And I like the way he started it. Again, he writes from a very honest perspective, and he said it up front. We went to trade shows for 2 or 3 years, and we're asking people in the Digits booth, "Hey, what do you guys do?" And the response was, I
would like to say that I think he was probably talking to me at the booth, and I probably gave him more information than that, but I'll let it slide in this case.
But it wasn't. We all walked away going, "Huh." And his take on it was always, it's a data gathering push, which is ultimately what it was, right? I mean, you were collecting information. So let's talk about that just as to kind of tee the conversation up.
Yeah.
So you've been in the space, like Digits has been in the space for a few years.
Yeah, we've been around for about 7 years, and maybe just to kind of refresh the group on just a little bit about who we are in case they don't know. And then I'd love to touch on some of the things that that Murph touched on that we particularly resonated with us. because some of his perspective and time in the market was just a great way to like think about how accountants should approach even how they make decisions about all of these pieces. But my name is Rob Hamilton. For folks, I think we did kind of like a little bit of an intro, but my background is in technology, from Twitter and Amazon Alexa and Twitch. But I've spent the last 5 years at Digits, working with accountants and finance teams and business owners to understand how we can automate their finance and accounting. So on Digits side, we've actually been around for about 7 years, which is a little bit what you're talking to, Gary. So we've been at trade shows, we've been at these things, and it was a lot of that time was spent learning from the community. And that's one of the things we've appreciated is the accounting profession is just such a community oriented profession that we were able to really learn together with a lot of accountants and build alongside of that community, so that when we eventually brought our ledger to market in March, that ledger was able to reflect a lot of that feedback we received over time on how to really think about these things from the core of what the needs are as an accountant and an accounting firm. And so we launched that ledger in March for operators and business owners to come use it. And then at Scaling New Heights, this, I guess now it's a couple months back, we launched all of our features for accounting firms on top of that ledger platform. And that was really kind of like the first, when you came to our booth at that point, we had a very crisp vision on who we were at that point. And I think is what sparked some of Murph kind of digging in and looking into all of this. So yeah, it's definitely been a journey. So,
and your role in, you said Twitter, Amazon Alexa, and Twitch, was that in a go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, it was all in go-to-market strategy, building out business development, sales teams, and working with some of the largest brands in the world in many cases on bringing the latest technology in how they kind of like approach the market. And so it's funny, if you talk back to like a college age me, I don't know that I would have ever said that my favorite class in college was not accounting. And so at this point now,
same here. Guilty.
Right. Looking back, I'm like, I don't know that I would have guessed that I would be so passionate about how we automate and push things forward in the accounting, but it's been a really, really exciting part of the career. So
yeah. Well, it's funny, kind of the two things that I really don't enjoy dealing with. One is employee benefits, and two is accounting. And just never was my sweet spot in college by any means. And so I've been in media and accounting now for almost 20 years. And prior to that, I was in media for employee benefits for like 6 years. So it's like it's been 26 of the last.
We're in the same boat here, Gary.
Yeah, in two markets that really I would never have guessed I would be working in. So, But the one thing you did say that is 100% spot on is accounting is a community, 100% a community, because while competitive with each other, they are still open arms. And I can't speak for huge firms, but can certainly speak in relation to small firms. Open arms, information sharing, helping one another out. You see it at Scaling New Heights. Absolutely. These people, it's friendships and family.
Yeah, and so honestly, I feel like I've built a lot of friendships over that time too. We had some newer folks on our team join us at Scaling New Heights this year, and it was so funny when, I'm a hugger in some cases, and people come over and they're like, "Rob, it's so good to see you," and they're like, "How do you know these people?" So, and I'm like, you know what, you spend time with folks and you learn from them, and hopefully we're bringing value back to them as well. It becomes, to your point, you become friends with a lot of these folks.
100%.
So
do you guys, so in that process, did you build like a, gosh, total blank on it, a group of professionals who were really like your go-to people that you could call up, and like advisory panel? Here we go. That's what I'm looking for.
We've had varying forms of an advisory council over the years, that has mostly focused in providing feedback on designs, processes, how they want the product to look and feel and behave over those years. Because really kind of like throughout this time, we've been testing our ledger and testing designs and bringing those things for feedback throughout this whole time that we've been coming to these conferences. And ultimately, we've also been working directly with accounting firms. So some of them like Highline and Armanino, they're ones we've talked about partnering with over time. But we also had an R&D kind of like accounting group that lived inside of our product organization as well. And between our partnerships and that R&D group, we've done over 2,000 closes on our ledger before we ever brought it to market, to really harden those systems and make sure that all the buttons are where you expect them to be. They behave how you want them to behave, and all the above. But at the same time, what we're really driving for is what we launched as the first AI native ledger. And what that means is all of the database architecture and all of the pieces within Digits are built to take advantage of the latest technology in AI. When we were founded as a machine learning company, which at some genius came along and rebranded it to AI along the way, but ultimately it's just machine learning. And our head of machine learning literally wrote the book on machine learning. So he has machine learning pipelines books that are published in the world as well. And so we've been training and building all these pipelines for a long, long time. And what we've seen is the efficiency gains that accounting firms have when they're leveraging Digits Ledger is wild. So through both our early partnerships with firms and what we've seen within our R&D folks, after using Digits Ledger for, let's say, a minimum of 3 months, you see a 30% decrease in the close time across those clients at the month end. And what the other piece of this that's like absolutely incredible is that alongside of those massive efficiency gains, the other major benefit that these firms see is that their clients actually love Digits as well, which I think is pretty rare when you're thinking about clients loving their legacy accounting softwares. That just doesn't really happen. And so at that point, if I'm an accounting firm, it doesn't really matter if I'm in growth mode of my firm or more in like a maintenance part of my firm. If you're in growth mode, you're going to get some efficiencies that let you grow faster, right? And then, but if you're in more of a maintenance mode, or no matter what, every accounting firm wants to make their clients have a good client experience. We've built out Digits in a much more consumer grade design process that what that downstream client receives isn't just a black and white P&L that they're like, I don't know how to read this, so I'm not going to open it. They get a designed, beautiful dashboard that what we've seen is when you use Digits reports only as like an output, instead of only reading them, let's say 15 or 20% of the time, Digits clients read them 70% of the time. And so you have this increased cadence with your clients that you just didn't see within legacy platforms.
And so you've used the term general ledger numerous times. Is that what you consider? Is that what internally you guys consider yourselves? We're a GL.
We're a GL, yes. The way that we've thought about it is if QuickBooks brought about kind of like the internet era or the desktop era, Xero brought in the cloud era of accounting, you could think of Digits bringing in the AI native era of accounting. And where in many cases, you see a lot of folks who are more bolting on more general LLM systems onto their databases and practices. That's fairly challenging to do in a secure way that actually takes advantage of the latest technology movements. And so on our end, we've put a really extreme focus on building the ability to leverage that latest technology alongside of all the underlying architecture and the work that the accountants do on the product. So,
all right, I'm going to pull on that for a minute. So you mentioned bolt-on, and what's really funny because I was thinking that earlier. So are you saying that instead of like we'll use QuickBooks, they have an app center with 1,500, 18, whatever the number is of apps. Now, are you saying with Digits, we don't need all these other applications because they're going to be native to Digits?
There's an aspect of that. So we'll, I think, separate out a couple different pieces that you're talking about. So I'll first talk about what you just initially said, which is kind of like this app interface mechanism, which ultimately what that is I have data elsewhere or in another
Hmm.
system, and I need to get that into my ledger. And so if I work with ADP or I work with Gusto or I work with an outside kind of like, let's say it's a construction project management company or inventory,
Hmm.
all of those types of connections are still going to be required. And we are actively working with those companies in order to make sure we have API connections to bring in that data seamlessly and in an automated way into
Okay.
Digits. So that's one piece, and that doesn't go away. And we will have kind of like an API that we've already built many connections, and we'll continue to build more based on community feedback around what additional connections are necessary. So that's one piece. But
Okay.
there's another piece you talk about, which is a lot of those apps are also, I would say, like workflow apps to some extent. And there's parts of those apps that we will be directly building into Digits.
Okay.
So, for example, some of how we're thinking about this is in order to automate more and more of the accounting, you have to bring in more and more of the accounting workflows. And so, in that world, if let's say I have an outside ledger for deferred revenue, I'm holding that in Excel, and then I just make journal entries or manually update things. There are apps that do some of these things as well. In our mind, those are ways that we can work with the accounting industry to automate those pieces into the ledger versus that being a manual workflow. And so instead of needing an app for that, if it's related to that, doing the accounting, variance checks, quality control, things along those lines, those are pieces that we would bring directly into the product or want to work with the community to figure out the right pieces to bring in appropriately, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So to
Yeah,
kind of
it
separate
does.
those pieces out.
Absolutely. So the I always like to find out, well, we talked about what it is. It's a general ledger, but an AI driven, AI first,
Mhm.
maybe is might be the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Um, General ledger. So I always like to find out what's in it for the accounting professional, because that's our core audience. What's in it for the end user or their customers from,
Yeah.
why should they even consider looking at Digits? I've used, we'll keep using QuickBooks, but I've used QuickBooks for 28 years. Why should I consider something different?
Absolutely. We touched on some little pieces of this question, but I love the question because we're bringing value in both those areas. So if I think about the accountant first, really what we're thinking about is how do we automate away the tedium? Some of what we just talked about as it relates to the different tools and workflows that you're using,
Hmm.
that in effect has just come about from that cloud era where everything got digitized. And in effect, a job was like created for accountants where we almost turned into like Gumby trying to aggregate data from a bunch of
Hmm.
different places. And that became like a new part of the job that you didn't necessarily have to do when an accountant was embedded in a company and all the data was more directly accessible. So in this cloud world, you're like, okay, half my job or more is just aggregating the data from all the different places across all of my clients. And that's only one piece of the puzzle. And so what Digits is really doing is first and foremost, how do we bring all that data in a more automated fashion and become that layer where you're not needing to kind of like spend the time doing all these things? So, for example, we can automatically bring in your bank statements from your bank. And with that, once those are brought in, you'll be able to handle the reconciliations automatically within the product versus needing to like go log into the bank, grab these things. Now, banks are finicky. Not every
Yeah.
bank out there is going to have all these functionalities, but that's a labor of love that we'll need to work through. But as that goes, that data collection piece becomes something that Digits can take on more and more of. But the next step of that is the automation of the workflow below that. So when we're thinking about um, bookkeeping, you have a bank feed today that brings in everything from the bank feed, and then you go in and review it and book it. In Digit sense, we've already learned from all the ways within our AI and machine learning models that you've done the work in the past and the accounting in the past on that business. And so as transactions come in, they actually just get auto booked into the ledger. And if the AI is not confident in where something should go, it will elevate that to you. into an inbox that you can then go review and say, hey, I know what this is, so I'm going to book it. Or maybe you need to go ask your client, get more context. And all of those workflows where you go grab context, client responds back, we can auto book things based on those responses directly into the ledger from there. So there's the data collection piece, and then there's the automation of the underlying workflow. But the high level piece of it is, how do we take away those more tedious elements of the accounting and then allow you to think about, how do I spend time to bring that next level advisory type of value to my client to help kind of push their success forward, which is, I think, all of the accountants that you talk to, or that I talk to, that's their core interest. Like, yes, there is value in doing the bookkeeping work and all the above, but really every accountant gets into the profession because they want to help business owners succeed. And so we want to help accountants spend as much time as possible doing that.
Yeah. And they're in the seat to be able to provide amazing advice
Exactly.
if they want to, if they put the effort into it, or have the right tools to help them present it in a way that your average small business owner wants to receive it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Don't come at me in accounting talk, right? But you and me, right? Don't come to
Yeah.
Rob and Gary with accounting talk. Come to us with charts and show, hey, good
Yeah.
and bad, right? And so that's what we
Yeah.
need, because we're not, most small business owners aren't in business to do accounting.
Exactly. And what you're talking about there is the other piece of this coin that you asked about in your question, which
Yep.
is, we also are going to help the accountant translate that into speak and visuals for the downstream operator as well. And
Mhm.
so that's where the more consumer grade design approach to, as much as we spend time with accountants on how to design and figure out where we can help them be more efficient within the AI, we're also spending time with operators of businesses. What do you want to see? How do you understand your business? What even could an accounting firm provide you that would give you better visibility or understanding? And so those types of pieces flow through into the operator experience on Digits as well, where we hear from operators all the time where it's like, look, I have this deep dive ability. I don't have, right now I get a black and white P&L that doesn't necessarily answer any of my questions. In Digits, I get my P&L from my accountant. I can dive into my business development spend and see all the vendors that I spent with, which ones are going up and which ones are going down, dive into the transactions. And if I have a question, I can elevate that question or make a comment directly in Digits. It goes right to my accountant about a specific transaction or category or vendor. And that type of interaction where it's like, cool, I'm going to explore my own business. And then as I have more educated questions, I can elevate them to the person that I've brought on to be more, my advisor to help me figure these things out.
Yeah. Okay. And so let's pivot over to, we've talked about AI a lot already, but from no shock, right? AI's here, and
Mhm.
it is part of our daily lives. Um, you see varying studies, and I'm not going to attempt to quote any, but I did see something recently that was kind of showing that accounting adoption of AI was actually pretty high.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't get into the details of that. What's your experience on that? Is the adoption of, is it, are the accounting pros adopting AI to send email, or are they adopting AI to really dig into the business and the numbers and the accounting side of their clients?
Well, I mean, what you're touching on is both correct and a challenge, right? Where it's right, like accountants actually, I would argue, are at the forefront of professions that I think are able to use AI successfully in a
Mhm.
way that helps drive them forward, which is really exciting. And we've seen accountants adopt that through a bunch of different ones of their workflows. And you touch on some of them, which are, how do I write this email better for my client? Or how do I respond to this appropriately? All the above, which are some, or like maybe making my marketing a little bit crisper or something along those lines of how I talk with a client. But what we've seen though is that those are some, I would almost say, more service level use cases, at least from an
Yep.
accountant's time perspective, on where the biggest impacts are going to be. But that leaves to the challenging part, which is the places where accountants are going to see the biggest impact. There's a lot of confusion around what we talked about earlier, which is like, what is actually AI versus what is just shipping every one of my transactions to OpenAI and saying like, what is this? Which is not really the same in from a what's going to be the most effective for me and what's going to be time savings for my client. And that's where Digits has really come in to build our ledger in a way that we've built and trained 18 proprietary models that focus on all different parts of the accounting workflow. Excuse me.
Okay.
From transaction categorization and vendor identification, all the way through to actually booking that category into Digits. And we have different layers of models that make it so that all of the automation goes directly specific to that client or specific to you as an accounting firm. But it's really, the waters are very muddy on where an accountant can get the most value, because everyone and their brother is out there saying, we have AI and we have AI and we even have AI, when different use cases in accounting actually require different types of models. And so that's where Digits is really being very thoughtful about how we approach it, where sometimes, to your point, like an LLM is a great for maybe a marketing email, but LLMs are notoriously bad at math. And so you don't want to ask it like, hey, can you go figure out, the math on this statement, or like an insight that I can share my client, because it's likely to be wrong. And so what Digits does is we balance the use of predictive models or document extraction models or LLMs, and we determine which workflows are going to benefit the best from each. And that's how we apply them appropriately on the back end. And our models are trained internally to Digits so that your data is not leaving our platform in order to determine those pieces.
Okay. Okay. So what about AI? What else, or what, not what about it? What else are we not talking about? Have you and I not touched on about AI in accounting, whether it's Digit specific or just in what you're seeing in the profession?
I mean, it's a great question, because it's one of those pieces that I think accountants, what we hear when we're talking to accountants, is there's so much news. How do I sift through this? How do I understand how this is going to impact me? Because it almost seems like every single day there's something new that it can do or can't do. And how do I navigate through that? And so it is hard for an accountant to know like exactly how and where to think about things. But I think the biggest piece for all accountants to think about isn't necessarily how to sift through the accounting, or sift through the AI news, but understand how this technology is going to affect you in your firm and how you provide value to your clients. So what I mean by that is every single time a new model comes out, Digits tests our own proprietary models against all of those models. And our founder, Jeff, puts out kind of like LinkedIn and tweets and things like that. So please follow him if you want kind of like updates on these things as they happen. But when GPT-5 was released, it came out and we hadn't yet seen a model get above 70% of correct transaction categorization in our tests. And so basically what we do is we have a list of transactions that we send to the models, and we have them like, hey, go through this and test it. We know the correct categorizations and all the above. So we're able to confirm, is this correct categorization or not? And GPT-5, and we know how many billions of dollars they spent training that model, only improved by 1% over the following model. So it went from, I think, 69.5 to 70.5 or something along those lines. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but only improved by 1%. Whereas Digits proprietary models that is training on the client and all the above, we booked things at 97% within that training set.
Wow. Okay.
And so in that world, the most important piece of this is we at Digits have done some tests also against human accountants for similar data sets as well. And we have found that, now granted, these are humans who have no context on these businesses or these transactions or anything. Like this is in effect like completely outsourced labor. but we found their success rate to also be around 70%. And so
Okay.
when you now, if you specialize, if in an industry or in a business or otherwise, like any accountant is going to get way above that because you understand that business. So
Mm.
this isn't like, speaking to that type of specialization, but more to that broad, more outsourced use case where these general models are getting really good, like on par with a non-context human or however you want to think about it. And
Yeah.
so what does that look like for you and your firm to think about, like, okay, if a bunch of these pieces are going to get automated, like arguably the compliance work, I don't know how that would be, or bookkeeping is probably too broad of a term, but basically just getting transactions into the ledger, there's going to be tools that get those things 70% correct. So for me as a firm, how do I think about, okay, if those pieces are getting automated and then I'm using digits, I can automate more and more of these other pieces of my workflow. What does that impact me and the work I can spend and where my team spends their time? And that to me feels like the biggest question that accountants should be thinking about. And it's actually something, this is dropping on the 30th, right? Just to double check.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Yeah, yeah.
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 The reason I ask is
Post your announcement. Yeah.
yeah. So in that world, today we will have launched our partnership program for accounting firms in a more holistic sense. And part of that partnership program is a set of training resources that will help bring accountants along this journey. The latest AI in AI, how to use digits, where does it impact me, and all the above. And so definitely would welcome accounting firms coming in, going through those trainings and understanding a little bit more about some of these pieces. So
Yeah. Are there any parameters around that partner program? I mean, do I have to have 3 clients on digits, or is there any structure like that?
not particularly. So like,
Okay.
yes, we obviously want you to grow with us, but you can join the partnership program without any
Okay.
clients
Yeah.
initially. And then there's different value in the chain as you kind of like grow with digits
Mhm.
and become more kind of like AI native within your firm. And so we work directly with firms where you'll have account managers and training resources where we will do one-on-one trainings with firms on how to either migrate clients or bring clients on or start fresh. But then we also have more async types of trainings, which is those modules I was just talking about through our academy as well.
Okay, great. And so anything else in the partner program that you can share, or
Well,
that you want to make sure people see, right? Hear about.
definitely. I mean, alongside of the one-on-one training resources, migration support, discounts that you receive as you grow and scale with digits, those are all, I think, fairly traditional and I hesitate to say generic, but like we're matching a lot of what's out there. There
Yeah.
is one thing that we're launching that is distinctly unique, only to digits. And to take advantage of it, you do have to be at a little bit more scale
Mhm.
within digits from an adoption perspective. But what we're launching is exclusive access to partners for what we're calling our firm models, which what that is allowing an accounting firm to train secure, isolated models that are trained specifically on the bookkeeping of their accounting firm. And
Okay.
so what that does is we already will train on a specific company. So you bring in a company, you do the bookkeeping and the accounting for that company. We'll learn how that individual company is doing things. And then if we see a transaction we don't know, it falls back to what is today our general model, which is trained across 825 billion transactions as of now. But what we're now allowing folks to do is, and what we've heard from a lot of accounting firms is, hey, I specialize in an industry, or I have my own special way of doing my chart of accounts, or
Mm.
whatever it may be. And what we're allowing firms to do now is train a firm model. So once you have more than 50 clients on digits, you'll be able to kind of like start to take advantage of this, where you could have a model that's specific to your firm and how you do the bookkeeping as well. And that's going to be exclusively available to our partner firms, which will be a pretty unique and great innovation to drive forward and think about.
That's great. So is there like a target, the ideal target for four digits, like a ideal client profile?
It's a great question. I think the way to think about it is that we are you're able to do the counting for any SMB in the market on digits. So ideal client profile is if you can use QuickBooks or any one of the other like legacy SMB ledgering systems, you can also use digits. The open piece of it is how automated your experience will be. So for example, if you focus in e-commerce and you have to have an integration to like Katana or another inventory management system, we haven't fully built out that inventory piece yet. And so your experience on digits might be a little bit more manual. And so that might not be an ideal profile, but is it possible to bring those over? Absolutely. And so in that world, the way I would think about it is, what type of client base are you working from? And how do we kind of like, because we're also taking feedback. So if you're like, hey, I can bring 50% of my clients over, but this 50% needs this specific integration, we can go actively seek building that out. And we will have an open API in the future as well to go work with those companies for them to do integrations too.
Right. Okay. Great. Anything else that we haven't touched on? We've touched on what Digit is, we've touched on kind of what's in it for accounting pros, what's in it for their clients, your partner program. I know the one thing I had jotted down here was obviously you won't be exhibiting at Intuit Connect, but I think you'll be present around the area.
Well, I think we are actually doing a cool event with you. We'll be around.
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. So in that world, feel free to folks can get in touch if you want to try and meet up while you're in Vegas.
Yeah, and then great segue. How would someone get in touch if they wanted to either connect with y'all, directly, online or in person? How do they track you down?
Great. I actually, it feels weird maybe giving my email on a podcast, but I'm actually fine if an accounting firm wants it. So I'm just rob@digits.com. So if folks want to get in touch with me, I can either direct you to the right person or we can find time together. But another way to do this is to go to digits.com/accountants. You can see it in our top nav as well, accountants, and you go to become a partner. And that's where you can come sign up and set up time with our team to get your questions answered, see the best ways to work together, and all the above on that front. So that's probably the best place to start.
Okay. And that was digits.com/accountants.
Yes, correct.
Okay, perfect. All right. And so we'll look for you at Intuit Connect. We are sending people to digits.com/accountants. And also, again, going back to the very first thing I said, and that was pointing people over to the article that Murph wrote 2 weeks ago, maybe 10 days, 2 weeks ago, as a two-part series on digits, where he really took a deep dive and shared his insight and his thoughts on the product. So go check it out. Rob, thank you so much for spending some time with us and for sharing info. We will see you, about a month out, right?
Yeah.
In Vegas.
Awesome.
All
well,
right,
I appreciate
great.
you, Gary. It was great being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you by Insightful Accountants Be Insightful membership program. Get 9 expert-led training tracks, over 30 CPE hours a year, hands-on workshops, and year-round premium content to grow your skills and your practice. Learn more at blog.insightfulaccountant.com. Just click the premium member content button.